In the midst of sex, drugs, the seedy side of the City of Angels, and the glamour and decadence of Hollywood fantasies, a group of school friends drifted into music and invented their own sound and look as day-glow paint freaks with a lot of funked-up style. This is the story of the Red Hot Chili Peppers phenomenon. It all started way back in the late 70s in Fairfax High School, Hollywood, where a gang of friends were having fun growing up. They didn't know it at the time, but four of them, Anthony Kiedis, Michael Balzary, Hillel Slovak, and Jack Irons, were destined to become the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Jack Irons and Hillel Slovak played together in bands since the age of 13. Jack was from a regular family and had a drum kit at home. Hillel, meanwhile, had been born in Israel but moved to LA when he was 5. At school, the pair bonded over a love of Kiss, before their interests turned to bands like Led Zeppelin, Queen, and Jimi Hendrix, whose unique playing style was a massive influence on Slovak. The pair formed their first band, Chain Reaction.
Basically, it's a high school band, and they just formed the tail end of the punk thing. And I don't think there's anything that serious about being in a band. It's more like, in fact, when it initially formed, it's more of an art kind of band, really. It wasn't like I don't think there any sense kind of direction of going in.
That was mainly sort of Jack and Hillel, and then eventually Flea kind of linked up with them. But at that time, Anthony wasn't in the band.
The energy of punks was sparked him into getting a band together. LA had a very good punk scene. There's bands like Black Flag going, who's like an amazing band. And there's also the bands like Minutemen, there's loads of other bands who are not so strictly punk bands. They have like, there's almost like, in the Minutemen, there's like a little almost like funkiness about them.
They were also quite interested in jazz music. I mean, Flea was a huge fan of Dizzy Gillespie.
Mike Balzary, known as Flea amongst his friends, grew up enthralled by classical and jazz music, in particular bebop. Originally a trumpet player, Flea was proficient enough to earn himself a coveted place in the LA Junior Philharmonic Orchestra before he switched to learn the bass. His jazz influences led him to play slap bass. That slowly developed into his own unmistakable style.
The influences he took from being young are, he's a great worshipper of the Gang of Four, obviously. So that quite basic idea of funk, which is quite urgent and whatever. But he also, obviously, was very into jazz. Jazz was his initial background. And there's a lot of people like Larry Graham from the Sly and Family Stone, and people like Stanley Clarke, who are really very technical. But he plays with this punk rock attack, with this kind of urgency, and speed and tempo, which is incredibly unusual in rock, where bass players generally pick a note and thrash away.
Anthony moved to LA at the age of 11 from Grand Rapids, Michigan, to be with his father, John Kiedis, an actor who preferred his stage name, Blackie Dammit.
Dad dealt in illicit and explicit and illegal businesses of many varieties. But he was a good dad, you know, he was my hero when I was a kid. He was a wild man, you know, he was kind of like the king of Sunset Strip in the late 60s and early 70s, and sort of catering to the needs of the rock stars of that era. And so I lived in a world that contained lots of naked partying girls, lots of drugs, lots of loud music, lots of late night parties, lots of fast cars, and lots of Bulgarian albino midgets. Couldn't get him out of our house.
His dad was a B-movie actor and moved the family out from Grand Rapids in Michigan to LA, and that Anthony Kiedis' initial ambitions were actually in acting.
And he used to get Anthony these little kiddie child parts. And there was a particular incident where Anthony appeared in a movie with Sylvester Stallone called Fist.
A charismatic guy with all the right friends in all the wrong places, Anthony was well versed in the glamour and decadence of Hollywood showbiz way before any of his peers. A creature of LA's seedy glitz and razzmatazz, Anthony absorbed all he saw and lived. Under his father's liberal tutelage, he sampled drugs from a young age, wore the craziest clothes, listened to the latest sounds of the underground, and indulged in the lust and carnality of good time girls. The future singer later claimed he had smoked his first joint before his 12th birthday and lost his virginity soon afterwards to his father's girlfriend. He had all the attributes of a rock and roll frontman. At the dawn of the 80s, the quartet were already becoming firm friends and playing together. Slovak and Irons invited Flea to join their first band, Chain Reaction, who rechristened themselves Anthem. Though a beginner on the bass, inspired by 70s funk bands like George Clinton's Parliament and Funkadelic, and post-punk bands from the UK like the Gang of Four, Flea was learning quickly and developing his own inimitable playing style. So good, in fact, that he departed soon afterwards to join semi-legendary local hardcore crew, Fear.
It was sort of around the time that Black Flag started playing in America in the sort of late 70s that really Flea and Anthony got very interested in this kind of hardcore punk rock.
One of the most intense and scary punk scenes in the world. The kind of intensity and violence and confrontation whipped up by bands like the Germs and Black Flag.
There was something from it that Flea managed to get with that whole kind of energy thing, and if you actually watch the live performances with Flea, I mean, he's just a man possessed. He plays bass like no one else.
One of Flea's friends was a promoter in one of the clubs in LA, asked him to put a band together to open up this particular night he had, and he'd been jamming with his friends and also with Anthony Kiedis, who had previously been the band's announcer, you know, when they were playing.
Essentially, they asked Kiedis to write, turn his poetry into lyrics, which he did. They were playing sort of Sunset Strip in the 80s.
And they also had a kind of wacky stage show, which hasn't really left them. And they were painted all different colours, they had stupid hats on, and you know, they were getting well into it.
And they called themselves something ridiculous, like the Marvellous, Majestic
Masters of Mayhem.
Tony Flom and the Majestic Masters of Mayhem.
Tony, someone, and the Marvellous I can't remember what. Thankfully, they changed the name to the Red Hot Chili Peppers shortly after they formed. For us all, thank God.
The quartet began to earn a strong local following on account of their unhinged performances and presentation that involved being covered head to toe in body paint, wearing strange headgear, and frankly, frightening trousers. Their colorful approach, live reputation, and outlandish hybrid of punk, funk, and psychedelia led the Chili Peppers to get offered a record deal.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers initially were almost like a sort of a joke band. They just really got together because they wanted to play on stage. They wanted the girls, basically, and they were starting to get quite interested in the drugs, or at least Hillel and Anthony were. And they went on stage, got to play some strip clubs and stuff, upstage the strippers by wearing the infamous socks on their nethers. And for some unknown reason, EMI Records decided to snap them up.
Lindy Goetz, who was a sort of he was kind of like a talent scout, if you like, but I think in sort of more of a, you know, higher up position, spotted them and got them signed to EMI.
Now, unfortunately, at the same time, Jack and Hillel were in another band called What Is This, and they had contractual obligations to stay with that band.
So when EMI signed them, they had to make the choice of which they were going to stick to, and they chose their other band. So already, you know, going into the first album, they'd lost their two kind of best friends and two bandmates.
They recruited ex-Captain Beefheart drummer Cliff Martinez and guitarist Jack Sherman, and the New Look Quartet began recording at El Dorado Studios. These new guys could never really fill the shoes of their pals, and it showed.
To go and sign your band to a major record label and then the band aren't there. I mean, what? You know, it's and to have a producer, you know, who, you know, Andy Gill, you know, in my opinion, is a musical genius. You know, his band are one of the greatest bands of my lifetime, but he was a fledgling producer. He'd not done much production. So you've got a novice band and, you know, a kind of a novice producer and two people who aren't even in the band.
At that time, there'd been a sort of, you know, a lot of bands doing something that I think was called kind of surf punk at the time, and it was that there was an element in what they were doing that was like that, which I thought was less interesting, and that's something that we kind of argued about in the studio.
To make matters worse, the producer they had brought in didn't quite hit it off with the group, and Anthony and Flea made their sentiments known.
I probably disappointed them because I wasn't just hanging out being a cheerleader. I was actually making them do things and try doing this, try doing that, things which they weren't expecting. They didn't like Jack at all. Obviously were not very pro Cliff either, which is, I thought was silly because he's such a great drummer. It does require kind of a bit of discipline to do that sort of work, and they were a bit out there at the time, you know, for whatever reasons. And I think they kind of thought that all they had to do was sort of do a gig in the studio and just, we put the mics up and captured it and it would all, you know, the vibe would somehow translate, and it doesn't really work like that. And I think that the strengths of the songs that really work, because they've been put together carefully, you know, and there's been a bit of like getting the drums and bass right and then doing some guitar and then doing vocals and kind of being careful about it. And so I think their preconception was it would be more like a gig, more sort of instantaneous. And I think they kind of thought I'd just kind of be their pal and just give them thumbs up all the time and, yeah, nice one, great, next song, you know. I think that's what they thought. And when I was kind of taking issue with them over certain things and trying to make it better, that might have been a step too far, that might have been something they weren't ready for. You know, it did cause a certain amount of friction and stuff.
The sessions were heavy going. Andy Gill had to piece together whatever he could of the recordings into some semblance of an album. It was far from awful, but it failed to capture the essence of the Chili Peppers, not least of all because it wasn't, strictly speaking, the Chili Peppers on the album.
One thing that you can take from the album is that the energy they have is always there in all of their stuff, whether it's slow stuff or big stuff. They do have a very strong sound and style and energy.
The sound of it's really weird, the songs aren't that great, but they're doing something very, very different. And I think anybody listening to that record must have thought, well, maybe it's going to take a bit of time to get this together, because they're actually reaching out to something people haven't really done before. I mean, yes, there have been antecedents to their sound. The Gang of Four have been in the ballpark, but the Chili Peppers are going somewhere very, very different with it.
They're kind of creating this musical mishmash, and Andy Gill had tried to pull that into some kind of semblance, but it wasn't their best work, although it was laying down the bare bones of what the Chili Peppers were about.
It's a group fumbling towards a sound, going somewhere where nobody's ever been before. But what makes them survive is the record label was much cooler then. They didn't drop stuff straight away. They're a lot more patient. And in fact, they had this really great live show as well. So this reputation kept them going. They put them on the road and they started building up in the clubs. It was a long process. I mean, getting the deal happened very, very quickly for them. But to actually make it took a long time. You know, there was a lot of spade work had to be done.
Flea, for one, was devastated that the band had failed to make a classic debut album. Freaky Styley, the next offering, was to be their debut album proper. Contractually released from What Is This, Slovak rejoined the band in time to hit the studio with the funkmeister himself, George Clinton, producing. Clinton was the master of crazy-ass funk rock and a pioneer of musical eclecticism and strung-out jams. He and the Chili's had an obvious and immediate artistic connection.
George Clinton did the exact opposite to Andy Gill, being from an exact opposite background. He you know, acknowledged that they were great musicians, but also saw that they were young boys who wanted a laugh. And, you know, he said, right, come on, let's go into my studio, let's have a party. Oh, and by the way, I'm inviting Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley. You know, I mean, can you imagine, you know, you're still in your teens, you're only just learning to play. You know, James Brown and George Clinton's backing band are suddenly jamming with you, you know, and you know, giving you the confidence to believe that you're actually worthy of that. It must have been, you know, a really extraordinary experience for them. And certainly, you know, when I interviewed Anthony Kiedis, and you know, his eyes kind of lit up at the memory of it.
I think that, you know, the Chili Peppers are great musicians, and that's actually quite apparent on the first record. But on the second one, you can tell that they're really getting into that, and I think that they'd be in their element if they were working with George Clinton and getting the opportunity to get in some very deep grooves. I mean, essentially, not commercial, still very uncommercial at that stage, but they're able to you know, explore what they've been craving to do, and it does come across.
So recording began. They left LA for the chilly climate of George's ranch in the sticks near Detroit. A musical meeting of minds is probably as far as George and the group could stretch. The Chili's were far too hyperactive, unruly, and fond of mayhem and indulgence for Clinton, himself no stranger to eccentricities. They ditched Clinton's offers of a mellowed-out routine of early morning fishing before recording, crashed his snowmobile, and scared the pants off a local band by hijacking their set on one of their midnight jaunts. Clinton moved the raucous band to a flat in Detroit City. They were allowed into Clinton's Universal Sound Studios only if they were on their best behavior. Fortunately, such tactics brought decent results from the unruly foursome.
Well, Freaky Styley's closer. They've been on the road a lot, so you can hear that there. The band's obviously like learned how to play together more. The thing about playing funk, you can't just play it. You know, it's something you have to learn. It's difficult. It's not like playing punk rock, which is like chugging guitar and letting go. Funk's like a groove. You have to learn the groove, and I think being on the road helps. But it's all, I mean, George Clinton does, and the record does sound better than the first album. But I don't hear a lot of George Clinton on the record. I don't think he doesn't. You don't think, wow, that sounds loads like Parliament Funkadelic, because George Clinton's work on the record is. He's there. He's done something to the band to make them sound better.
I think when George got involved, he basically kind of understood what they were doing and kind of tied them down a bit to essentially what they were getting at. And as a result, I think that he kind of puts choruses into the music. He develops a much deeper kind of groove to the band, you know, and the band really sort of come alive for him, I think.
They're getting their feet on the ground, and again, you have to be underlying how patient their record label were, because nowadays you get 2 singles and you're out the door, you know. With 2 albums in, no sign of a hit record, no sign of the scene appearing, and the label's still prepared to give them another album.
But one thing to also note, at the time of making this record, is half the budget was spent on drugs, so this was obviously starting to set in and become something of a problem which it would later develop to be a big problem.
Still hard at it on the LA scene, band manager Lindy Gertz started to line up out-of-town gigs to make them more than just an LA oddity. They had over a year of touring ahead of them. They played a couple of dates with Run DMC, then they started headlining nationally, before heading to Europe, where they played a clutch of shows, hitting the UK for the first time. Much to Flea's relief, Jack Irons accepted the invitation to rejoin the band.
Well, they built a reputation of being like a very over-top live act, and there's plenty of sex going on. And I think in the early to mid-80s, it was fairly sexless in pop music. You look at New Romantics, and they're not very sexy. There's no dirty sex going on there. With the Chili Peppers, there was plenty of that going on and off the stage. The songs are about sex, every single type of sex. It's a key part of the whole persona, is that sex and energy, good times. It's what the whole the Chili Peppers thing's about. Not very clothes, like waving it all out. I mean, that was very important to the Chili Peppers thing. It's the dirtiness of funk, the sexuality of funk, mixed with the frat boy mentality of growing up as a white boy in Los Angeles. And yeah, it's a fairly potent brew, and it's one that was working.
If you listen back, no matter what album it's from, you can always get that sort of great, exciting energy from them. It's just, it's never been focused at this point in their career to where it should be focused.
The band now went in to record their third album, Uplift Mofo Party Plan. They started rehearsals in EMI's rooms on Sunset. The first day they arrived with only 5 completed songs, producer Michael Beinhorn hit the roof. Extensive touring had taken its toll on creativity, but Beinhorn made them shape up, got them into a routine, and generally imposed the structure they really needed at this point to get the album done.
They needed someone to say, look, okay, you're pissing away, thousands and millions of pounds of major record company money, and you can't keep doing this. You will just get dumped, and you'll be, regretting it for the rest of your lives. Get in there, write some goddamn songs, make an album that makes some form of sense, and stop twatting about. And they obviously respected him enough to hear this and do it, which I don't think makes it, a classic album by any means, but at least with something like Fight Like a Brave, for example, you got it.
So much more feeling to it that was like the others. It was kind of a bit hectic. This one, it just sort of sat a lot better, and because of this, they're more comfortable in what they're playing. The songs are coming out better. The whole process is smoother.
The first track really that came out off of that Uplift Mofo Party Plan was Fight Like a Brave, which is just this absolutely crazy punk, funk, rock, rap record, and the video is just totally insane as well. I mean, Anthony Kiedis is like dressed up as some kind of Native American Indian with like a feathered headdress and war paint and all sorts, and then they're kind of marching like soldiers. It's a totally insane video. It was just made for MTV really, although it wasn't shown at the time on MTV. And there was just nothing else like it, and I think that was one of the things that attracted a lot of the people who were listening to the Chili Peppers at that time, which was the UK underground, because they certainly weren't a mainstream act at that stage.
There is still that underlying pin of the drug problems, which, perhaps might fuel the kind of wacky side of it a little bit, or a lot even, but at the same time it's taking away, causing underlying problems between different band members, and generally just causing havoc.
I mean, Fight Like a Brave was written about basically Hillel and Anthony's drug problems. It was all about how they were fighting like braves trying to battle against this whole heroin thing. and it was one of the strong tracks off of the album.
All the hallmarks of what makes the Chili Peppers great are already on the album. You know, you've got the fantastic rhythm section, the great grooves, the kind of the little rapping vocals going on there. There's a little rap influence coming in here now. Some good songs and everything. It's a really great party record, and it's a party record that lifts them up a couple of levels in America. And the alternative scene's also getting bigger by then, because what people forget is in the mid-80s, the alternative scene was tiny, you know. People used to say, oh, yeah, Sonic Youth have got a real breakthrough record here, it'll sell 20,000, you know. To be a big alternative band in the 80s didn't mean you were in the top 10 of the album charts. It meant you were getting 500 people at your gigs. It was different. Till Nirvana came along, the alternative scene was pretty small, you know. So the Chili Peppers getting towards, with that album, they get towards the top of a small scene. The alternative scene really was alternative then.
Uplift Mofo Party Plan was easily the band's strongest work to date. Yet despite the artistic success of the album, EMI decided it wasn't doing very well commercially and sent the Chili's on tour again. Uplift Mofo Party Plan was the last record the band would make with their childhood friend. Back in LA, the sometime painter and guitarist who defined the band's sound and still in many ways continues to today, overdosed on heroin and died in his apartment on Saturday, June 27, 1988. On Monday, a friend found Hillel's body. He had only been 26 years old.
Anthony and Hillel had been on the road touring with the band for the Uplift Mofo Party Plan album, and they had managed to stay pretty much clean. After the tour, Hillel was like, I've got to go back on it, because he was really starting to feel rough. He'd been going cold turkey. The band had been doing press in hotels and stuff whilst they were on tour, and Hillel was just so sick that he had to stay in his room. So it was basically Jack Irons and Anthony and Flea doing all the interviews whilst Hillel was just cold turkeying in hotel rooms. So literally when he came off the tour, he was like, I need my smack again. And the story basically goes that they'd come off the tour, Hillel gone back to his flat, and he died, and it took until the Monday for his body to actually be found when a friend phoned up to see how he was. And the kind of guilt that hit the band was just crazy.
I think people generally assume that, you know, that happens and then they say, right, let's clean up our act, let's, you know, get on with this. But in fact, it ended up spiralling Anthony Kiedis worse and worse into heavier and heavier drug use and denial about the drug use, which continued up until 2000, which a lot of people think that he kind of stopped that back in the early days, but it didn't. It kept on rolling.
I think the truth is it's a really, really unfortunate thing that happened, and that obviously that would make his friends and bandmates, because they were both, you know, it's easy to forget that, look at their own lifestyle, and obviously ask themselves the question, was there something that they could have seen and done to change it? But the truth of the matter is, you know, that is the risk you take when you sink into that drug lifestyle. That is the risk everyone takes. They may not wake up the next day.
The thing about Hillel is that he's just a friend of ours who we love dearly, who contributed so much to our existences and shaping the way that we think and the way that we act. And he was just a really beautiful person who we were extremely close to, who we shared, you know, an infinite amount of, like, soulful, deep, fun, all kinds of experiences together. We grew up together, just sharing everything together, and we loved him. You know, I mean, he's the one that got me to play bass. He's the one that turned me on to so many things, and both of us, you know. He's just someone that we loved very much, and now he's gone, and it's just terrible, and there's not a day that goes by where either of us don't think about him. And I just miss him, you know, but it's a double-edged thing, because at the same time that it depresses the hell out of me, it makes me so sad that he's gone. At the same time, I just feel lucky that I got to know him at all, ever.
I think someone like Flea, who's a very sensitive kind of guy, I think it would be difficult for him maybe to carry it on without his friends. But I think Anthony seems like a guy who's like, who knows he's a star. What else is he going to do? He's not going to deliver letters. I mean, since he was 5 years old, he's been living in this kind of crazy life in LA with his dad. He's in Starland. He's not going to go, all right, I better stop and just go back to the real world. The real world for him is being in a band, touring the world with a crazy, chaotic kind of lifestyle. I think for Flea, because he came from a different kind of background, it must have been a bit more difficult for him to handle.
The death of Slovak had understandably cast a long shadow over the others too. Jack Irons appeared to be in a state of shock, so traumatized that his family eventually admitted him to a psychiatric clinic. 6 months later, sitting in his pajamas in a mental institute, he received a call from Joe Strummer, who woke him from his reverie, and soon he was touring with the legendary Clash frontman. For Flea, these days were bittersweet. The birth of his first daughter, Clara, whom Hillel had predicted would be a girl, meant his happiness was tinged with sadness. There is no escaping the cycle of birth and death, and no doubt the new life reassured Flea that all was not lost. Perhaps the death of Hillel and the shadow he cast would have been the end of the band if they hadn't found some newer, younger blood. Initially, there seemed no possible replacement for their friend, friendship being at the heart of their magical essence. But then, as if sent from Hillel himself in the heavens, along came 19-year-old John Frusciante.
Hillel Slovak is a great guitar player, but John Frusciante's just really special guitar player, isn't he? I mean, it just seemed completely natural. He just dropped in the band, and they got the perfect guitar player for the band. It's just like, sometimes I think, yeah, they've had a lot of bad luck in their career. They've also had some incredible strokes of luck as well, haven't they? Where things have just gone really right. I mean, for a lot of people, to replace a guitar player as good as Hillel Slovak would have been very, very difficult. But to get John Frusciante, just like the band went better. You know, it's like, they must be like going, God, how did that happen? He just turns up in the first rehearsal and the whole thing's perfect.
I used to be like, in 7th grade, I would walk into music stores and just, everybody would think I was an amazing guy because I was about this tall and I could play all these Hendrix songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In my opinion, John Frusciante was the missing link of the Chili Peppers. I think that while Slovak did lend very heavily to their sound, I think John Frusciante is a very, very large portion of their sound.
You know, he's such an amazing talent that when he plays with the band, that's when they're at their best.
To complete the foursome, they still needed the right drummer, so Anthony and Flea started the arduous task of auditioning. After seeing all the wrong people, in walked giant-sized Detroit native Chad Smith, a man who a friend had described as fond of eating drums for breakfast.
He strolled into audition for us, and we took one look at him and went, we don't think so. And then he sat down, and he proceeded to, blow the sockets out of our bones.
He's a powerful drummer. He's a hard hitter. He comes with a different kind of thing. He's an AC/DC. He's a rock guy. He gives it a big sound, big kind of stadium sound. It's a huge sound. And his personality-wise, he works for as well because he's a very down-to-earth guy. He's not all airy-fairy, la-la-land kind of guy. And there's a touch of that with the rest of the people in the band. But because he's your classic rock drummer. He's just a big guy, hits the drums hard, very down-to-earth. Has no time for the extra bullshit. And I think that really makes the band. He's an anchor man. He weighs it down really good.
He's just a big, beautiful, rhythmic powerhouse of a man who's obviously extremely connected to the rhythms of the universe.
So they started the fourth album with a brand new lineup that signaled a rebirth of the band. Phase 2 of the Chili Peppers' journey was beginning. Recording their much-delayed album with Michael Beinhorn, the band learned how to interact. The fresh-faced Frusciante clashed with Beinhorn on virtually every take, but they got through the sessions thanks to the disciplinarian producer insisting on squeezing the best out of the band. The first single they released, Knock Me Down, went to number 4 in the US charts. The album had originally been called Rocking Freakopotamus, but Kiedis changed it to Mother's Milk, which he said was life-giving, pure and wholesome, something he believed their music represented. The song Higher Ground certainly hit the spot. MTV America sprang to their feet, cast their couches aside, and threw themselves around the room to the funk, punk, thrashy mayhem of the Chili Peppers' kinetic take on Stevie Wonder's hit. It was a visual and oral assault on the senses as the gang virtually jumped out of the video and into the living room.
I think they took it to a new audience. I think a lot of the kids that were listening to their version of Stevie Wonder's Higher Ground probably hadn't heard the original and just assumed that it was a Chili Peppers track because they have made it their own. And I think it does show how much of an impact some of those kind of early funk and Motown classics have actually had on the Chili Peppers sound.
Mother's Milk is the first absolute classic Chili Peppers album with loads of really good songs. You can hear John Frusciante straight away. He's got a very distinctive style. He's got a very needly thin guitar sound. He's very good at little funk chops and always very melodic little licks that he does as well. He's a really good songwriter. The rhythm section just clicks. It just sounds fantastic now. You've got the big meaty drums and Flea's really funking out the bass. So there's a lot of confidence, a lot of space for Anthony to go off on his raps, but he's also singing a little bit here as well now. So there's like little choruses going on. So the songwriting is really spot on. This is the first Chili Peppers album to break into mainstream. It's the one that, I mean, they've been close before, but this is the one that gets them really big. You know, this is one that takes off and they become a big band.
The band was reborn. They started the Mother's Milk Tour on September 9th, 1989 in Seattle. The tour was characterized by indecent exposure, Anthony busting his ankle, and Flea's new fetish for underwear, which alternated between disposable nappies and his own underpants. They went down a storm.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers.
The amazing thing in a way was that Mother's Milk had left them really poised to do what they then did. The amazing thing was that EMI let them go and just let Warner's just, you know, I don't mean to talk business, but it was one of the record label blunders of all time when they had so much credibility in place and they had a really big live following and now a decent radio following after having a couple of, you know, halfway radio hits. And then they just passed that to Warner's, who just took it and ran with it.
If there was anyone able to truly capture the Red Hot Chili Peppers' essence on record, it was renowned producer Rick Rubin, whose services the band enlisted. The first thing he did was change their surroundings. He holed them up in an old mansion in Laurel Canyon, a place reputed to be haunted, and allowed the quartet to communally explore their musical talents and imaginings. Rubin allowed them to unleash their spirit within the usually stodgy atmosphere of a recording room. He inspired them to have fun in the studio again.
The practical things that he did were, first of all, he got them to move into this supposedly haunted house with him throughout the whole making of the album, and made them, sort of to try and encourage them to be more of a unit. The house apparently had a real vibe to it, and maybe input a bit of that into them as well. Secondly, he had them do different things with recording they'd not tried before, like going outside and recording one of the songs. It was recorded outside at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I got a girl, say she long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with the beats in the hall. I'm out in the red hot. Oh, she got to say, love me. Yeah.
The stars in the sky and looking over Laurel Canyon, it's going to give your vocal and everything a lot more atmosphere than looking at a wall like that,
Well, Rick Rubin is a great producer. His track record is amazing, isn't it? You look at all from the hip-hop scene, right through everything he's done, right through his Johnny Cash records, which are the best records that Johnny Cash ever made, that is saying something, because Johnny Cash makes amazing records. So it's like everything he's touched has been really, really good. When he teams up the Chili Peppers, it's perfect.
And he really just gave them the time and the place to experiment. If you see the video that accompanied the making of Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, which is called Funky Monks, they're banging bits of scrap metal and doing all these strange things.
You guys played it great, but Flea, split the difference there. Come in a little bit, okay?
The whole thing blossoms. Mother's Milk, great record, gets them onto just about on the edge of the mainstream. They're big now. They get Rick Rubin in, and suddenly you've got like a huge record, multi-million-selling record.
The Chili Peppers were, prior to Rick Rubin, very much set up to be a live band. It was very frantic. It was more about energy and notes per minute than it was about songs. Frankly, there weren't really many songs, which is why they had to, they were most famous for a Stevie Wonder cover prior to that. And what Rick Rubin did with them, and what he does with everyone he works with, is he amplified the good bits and cut out the crap bits. And you can see him in action doing that. He made Flea from this frantic, punk funk slap machine into someone who was playing these beautiful melodic lines and playing simple lines, sometimes not playing at all.
We're gonna go. See that? That should be the vibe, like what you just.
Yeah, it is so hard because there's so little time in each thing.
But just keep them really simple. Ba-dum, ba-da-dum.
Okay.
Ba-dum, ba-dum.
Okay.
Top or bottom?
From the top.
And it's something from which they've never looked back. And it's an incredibly different band. They wouldn't have had anything like the commercial success they've had without Rick Rubin. I have no doubt about it.
He did something which I think, is their eureka moment. I honestly do. There were notebooks lying around of Anthony Kiedis' lyrics, and Rubin did a rude and nosy thing and started poking around in them to find out what he'd been writing, and found one particular lyric and was really struck by it, and said to Kiedis, well, have you got a tune for this? What's this? This is great. This is the one. And Kiedis is like, it's really kind of emotional and introspective and confessional, and I think they'll just laugh at me. It's just whatever. And he's like, no, this is the one. This is the one. I think this is great. I'm going to make you come out and sing this to the rest of the band. And he walked out of there and he sang Under the Bridge to the rest of his band, thinking that they might turn around and go. And he said they were like, in tears and saying that's just the most beautiful thing you've ever written.
It's at this point that the Chili Peppers start sort of writing songs, you know, as conventional songs. But the best thing about this is that they still retain that jamminess and that energy. They've still got that, and but we're starting, even as far back as this now, we're starting to get the sort of Chili Peppers that we'd know later on, that kind of chilled out Chili Peppers. They're starting to appear in places on Blood Sugar Sex Magik, but I think that was the album they needed to make to sort of firm themselves as a major force.
It was just this moment of chance almost, which allowed Kiedis to see that his bandmates, you know, didn't require him to be Mr. Macho, Dick at the front. You know, that they accepted him on different levels to that, and that they were all ready to grow up, and they were all ready to write songs with tunes, and they weren't frightened of everybody putting their lighters up or whatever they were going to do to it.
Blood Sugar Sex Magik really spelled out what the Chili's were all about and stormed into #2 in the Billboard album chart. The album's lead singles, Under the Bridge and Give It Away, became huge hits in their own right. The Chili Peppers were finally a world-beating band. But yet, they were still plagued by drug problems. This time, it was John Frusciante. Still only in his early 20s, the sensitive guitarist had coped with the pressures of endless touring and the showbiz glare that went with being in a band that he had once been a fan of by forging a reliance on heroin. And in 1992, during a Japanese tour, announced his departure from the Chili Peppers.
It's just the ultimate party band. That's the whole thing about it. They were a party band, but sometimes the party gets out of control. You know, you're drinking, you're partying, you're shagging, and it's great, and it's really good fun, but then you're doing a bit of coke, and you're doing a bit of heroin, and you do a bit more heroin, and a bit more heroin, and then suddenly you're just like this ravaged mess.
He started to withdraw from Kiedis and Flea. He started to withdraw from the band, whatever his reasons were, and then, you know, left the band and booked himself into a room at the Chateau Marmont, which is the most legendary, you know, sleaze, bad karma hotel in Sunset Boulevard, and said, and I was going to print saying, I made a decision to become a drug addict. And he sat there for however many years it was, and tried to kill himself with drugs until all his teeth dropped out, until his arms were covered in scars, burns, and until he was in hospital, you know, inches away from dying. And, you know, and he explains that it wasn't for the same reasons that the likes of Kiedis and Flea and Slovak became drug addicts, you know, having a good time, you know, being out, being sociable, you know. It was because he'd been very depressed ever since he was a child. He heard voices in his head, he had mental health issues, and being in the band at that point had brought them out and made things even more difficult for him. And he self-medicated, you know. He tried to take the voices away by obliterating himself.
When I joined the band, I couldn't believe that they like wanted to be this other thing than they were, you know. Like they didn't think, like I thought of them as huge stars, you know, but to them they weren't famous yet, you know, and they hadn't made it yet, and they wanted to be as big as Aerosmith or whatever, you know. And I couldn't, like, that was a shock, yeah. But it didn't bother me. I was happy as hell. But I hoped that we would stay at the level that we were at in popularity. It had never entered my head. It was never a thought that went through my head that said, people are going to buy this and listen to it. A lot of people all over the world. Like when I first said it, I said all over the country. And then I realized, Jesus, all over the world. That's the way. I don't think that death is a big deal. I don't care if I die right now. It doesn't mean I'm self-destructive. I really love life, and I think that's the only way to love life. Okay, you want me to say something soulful? Drugs. I'm a junkie, and I love shooting up, and that means I'm self-destructive, and you know, is that good enough?
I don't know. Did you feel that was a true statement, or?
Yeah.
Oh.
He was holed up in this motel room, just like in this kind of weird twilight zone, just doing all the heroin. Completely got lost in that kind of world. And you can't blame the kid. He's only a young kid. He's only about, even then, he's only about 23, 24. He's gone from being a nobody right into like the band that's broken huge across the world. That's a tough break. From the outside as well. He's got caught up in all the lifestyle. Well, you would, you know. It's like anybody. It's like people always sneer at Sid Vicious, but he was 21. You know, it's there on a plate. You're going to take it. You don't understand what it's going to do to you. You think you're indestructible, and John Frusciante luckily found out just before that he wasn't indestructible. You know, he was on the way to like Hillel, Slovak. You know, to lose one guitar player is a tragedy. To lose two is just like, my God, what's going on here? You know.
While Frusciante descended into the dark world of drugs and depression that would spawn a series of solo albums, his bandmates found a new guitarist, former Jane's Addiction man Dave Navarro. They had come too far to split now.
Dave Navarro I mean, the Chili Peppers keep getting great guitar players. There's no two ways about it. I mean, they've got a good ear for what sounds good.
Dave Navarro was a completely different kind of guitar player. He's like a much heavier guitar player. I mean, he's from Jane's Addiction, who were a great band. In some ways, the fellow travellers of the Chili Peppers. There's an intelligence there. There's an experimentation there. There's a mashing of different styles. They're both equally key LA bands that period to kind of sum up the music scene in that city. So he was like the obvious choice for the band, really. I mean, they got the guy that's, you would never think they'd get him, but he's the obvious guy to come in and step in.
I admired Dave Navarro at the time because he was very honest, even before he'd really recorded anything with the band, that he did not like funk music, which is almost, you know, antithesis of being a Chili Pepper. It's not to say that Navarro is a two-dimensional player. You know, he's very well versed in many different forms of music, but funk is certainly not his first love, and I think that really showed. And I think he takes a more structured approach to composition and playing, which didn't necessarily fit with the Chili Peppers' way of doing things. But also, having said that, the Chili Peppers is probably a very hard gang to join. You know, as any group like that who've been so close-knit for so long. And they're all good guys, but I don't think that was a good personality match.
People look back on One Hot Minute as not being the best of the latter period Chili Peppers records, but it's actually some really good moments. I mean, Aeroplane is a really fantastic song. And the other great thing about Chili Peppers is they've always had a real command of melody. I mean, they write melody as good as the Beatles ever did. I mean, they are really great tunesmiths, the Chili Peppers, which kind of gets lost and all up to the last two albums with that kind of period. People looked at them as the kind of frat boy humour, you know, the party bands, great grooves, great band, great fun to go and see live. This kind of really mad sense of humour kind of thing going on. People forget they actually write really great tunes, and Aeroplane's got a really fantastic, beautiful melody in it.
It's definitely the underrated, lost Red Hot Chili Peppers album. Except for the fact that I think it was like #2 in Britain and #4 in America. So everybody sort of says, well, it's flopped, but it just totally didn't. It's a really, really great multi-textured, multi-layered record, which did take things on from Blood Sugar Sex Magik to Californication. It brought in more psychedelic influence. There were more vocal harmonies on it. It had more texture in it. We saw them getting further and further away from the funk metal thing. And it really is a complete transition record and a very, very, very good one. And probably out of all the Red Hot Chili Peppers albums, it's probably the one which sort of begs repeated listening. You know, whereas most of the rest of the albums, they hit you in the face straight away with what they are, and they kind of stick that way. I think One Hot Minute, you take 6, 7, 10, 12 listens to really unwrap it all. And I like records like that, and I think a lot of people did.
Though a fantastic guitarist, Navarro didn't really fit the bill. After debuting with the band at Woodstock 1994, it soon became apparent he had a different method of working, which was too structured and thought out for the Chili Peppers. This was the sticking point for the band and the problem with his one album with them when One Hot Minute was released in 1995. The record was met with a mixed response.
I think it's very difficult when the band write off an album. I mean, you know, this happened to the Lars with their first album, this happened to the Beta Band with their first album. If a band pretty much write off a particular album they've made, then the press and the public go along with them. I mean, if they're not saying it's great, then, you know, it becomes accepted wisdom. Oh, this was crap. I think they wrote it off because they weren't in a happy place at the time, because Navarro hadn't worked out, and because there was a lot of regret over John Frusciante.
After One Hot Minute, Anthony decided to journey across India alone. On his travels, horrified by the permeation of the California dream into all cultures, he conceived the title track to what will be their next album, Californication. Good job the talented and much-missed John Frusciante would be there to help realize his creative ideas.
Dave Navarro is a very fine player and he's a consummate rock star, but obviously the chemistry wasn't there. And John brings a lot of instinctive musicality. And John's playing is very kind of free form, and he uses a lot of clean tones which you wouldn't necessarily associate with a high energy band like the Chili Peppers. And definitely he's a huge part of it. And now that's the only lineup. You know, I think they realised when with the kind of experiment, as it were, with Navarro, that for all John's, shall we say, eccentricities, his music was totally worth it. And I don't think ever again they're going to think, okay, well, someone's having problems with this or someone's having problems with that, let's kick them out. I think they know that for better or for worse, this is the Chili Peppers, and they're going to work with any idiosyncrasies to keep this lineup, because that is the Chili Peppers.
Navarro was ousted in 1998 during a time of relative decline for the band. It was a parting rumored to be acrimonious. Frusciante, meanwhile, had checked in and out of rehab a new, clean man. He had been jamming with Flea in his garage. Kiedis and Smith soon joined in, and from the first note, they all felt the rekindling of the Peppers' magic spark. Their jamming buddy was officially back in the fold by April 29, 1998, a mere 26 days after Navarro's leaving. In a career pattern of peaks and troughs, triumph and tragedy, the revitalized Chili Peppers delivered another huge album, Californication.
Well, Californication was a change in direction for Chili Peppers, but I think of all the bands in the history of rock music who've grown up and tried to mature, they're the only ones that pulled it off. They're one of the few bands that actually got better. I mean, most bands do the mature record and it's miles worse. But they actually did it, when I say mature, it's not actually that mature. There's still some. There's a sadness there. They picked up that thing that I was thinking California. It's like it's very shiny and clean and happy, but there's a very dark side to it. And that record captures that. The way Mamas and Papas did. You know, some of those 60 songs, they can sound like really jolly, but there's a kind of dark soul to them. It does work on a lot of different kind of levels, but the songwriting is absolutely fantastic on it. I don't care if it doesn't sound like the old stuff. It's probably their best album. There's some really great songs on it. There's a really good kind of variation of all different little things they do really well on that record. You know, you can hear bits of Fugazi in there. You can hear bits of 60s pop music and melodic stuff. You can hear Beach Boys in there, the Beatles in there. You can hear the Gang of Four in there. You can hear all that kind of post-punk stuff. It's not as heavy, it's not as in your face, but they can't keep doing the same thing all the time.
I'd say they're far more melodic now. That is the side that seems to interest them more and more. I mean, in fact, they're a rock band. I mean, for all the backstory of what they've done, the wild guys, the funk metalers, the crazy sort of, intense musicianship, they're a rock band now. It's got funky elements in it. It's got moments of dazzling musicianship, and their influences are still there. But they're a rock band, a rock and roll band.
The band hit the road and toured arenas and stadiums of the world as Californication sold in the millions. To date, 13 million and counting. Problems such as drug addiction and ego clashes that had followed them were now a thing of the past. Older and wiser and infinitely richer, the band recorded By the Way, a broad spectrum of sounds ranging from the spike funk anthem Can't Stop to Beach Boys-inspired songs such as Universally Speaking, to Marachi, electronica, and much more. It was the first time the band had been truly clean in the studio, and it showed.
I think By the Way is just brimming full of brilliant ideas, brilliant songs.
I like the way the track By the Way, it sounds like the old Chili Peppers just stuck bang smack into the new Chili Peppers. It's like the groove shouldn't fit at all, but it just kind of does, doesn't it? Because it's the Chili Peppers and they get away with anything. So it's like a here's what we did before and here's what we do now, and we are the same. You know, it's the same band. You know, like it, Lump It, and millions of people really liked it, didn't they? I mean, those two records are absolutely enormous records, aren't they? I mean, yeah, of course, when you're in a band, people never like what you do 10 years later. If they stayed the same, people would say, why have they stayed the same? So people always going to complain. But, you know, the millions of people who bought those records and love those records aren't complaining, are they?
They are sort of more serious, perhaps, but in a kind of a mature way. It's almost like they've grown with their fans. They're not writing silly songs anymore, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a bit of a shame because, you know, they were so good at those silly songs. But, you know, I guess, you know, when you start reaching a certain age, you start maturing and realise that you can't do silly, sexy songs forever, and there are more important things in your life, and you just want to write about those things. But, yeah, you know, By the Way was a more mature sound.
And when you add John Frusciante's, you know, he's worked so hard on backing vocals and harmonies. And, you know, throughout the By the Way sessions, he says that, you know, he was rehearsing and recording with the band, and then he'd go straight home with a Beatles chord book and his best mate from another side band he was in, and they'd just sit up all night practicing how to do Beatles harmonies. And then when he thought he'd got the Beatles harmonies down, right, he then bought a copy of Pet Sounds and got the chord book for that, and they sat there and worked out all the Beach Boys harmonies. That's how hard this guy worked. Just this one detail on the album. You know, it's just the backing vocals. But if you listen to By the Way, the backing vocals on the album, they make it. They're beautiful.
Released in 2002, By the Way had gone platinum in 26 countries, a miraculous achievement given their One Hot Minute slump of 5 years earlier. As the band members hit 40 years old, they were in the enviable position of being the world's biggest selling rock band and a consistent huge live draw.
You know, it's the result of 4 men who love music and who have had their life saved by it and are kind of giving back. And, you know, By the Way, I think is just an extraordinary sort of achievement, really, considering where they were when they started.
I think one of the strangest things about the Chili Peppers is they seem to break through into every single genre they go on.
I don't necessarily see the Chili Peppers running out of creative steam anytime soon.
But thank God they're here now, because they sound absolutely fucking awesome. Can't say that, can I?
They had survived setbacks and tragedy, always returning to the core friendship of Kiedis and Flea, aided and abetted by Frusciante and Smith, and all driven by a collective devotion to music. It has been a long journey with never a dull moment. The Red Hot Chili Peppers remain one of the most important bands of their time and an inspiration to younger generations for whom music is the very essence of life.
Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city I live in, the city of angels. Lonely as I am, together we cry. Drive on the streets 'cause she's my companion. I walk through her heels 'cause she knows who I am. She sees my good deeds and she kisses me winded. I never worry, now that is a lie.